Bonnie Claremont, and I'm a citizen of the Ho-Chunk Nation. And I also work for the Tribal Law and Policy Institute. We are a national training and technical assistance provider. And I am here today to talk about and visit with you about advocacy, and in particular grassroots advocacy, which is for me a passion and something I particularly enjoy talking about and visiting about.
My name is Shelley Miller. I am an enrolled Kiowa tribal member. I have lived in the Oklahoma City Anadarko area most of my life and started this work back in '97 when I started as an advocate, and I am now the executive director at the Native Alliance Against Violence Coalition here in Oklahoma.
Yes, I want to start with talking about the different types of advocacy, and because there are many different types, as we know, in Indian country, tribal communities, wherever we're talking about, and I think it's really important that we distinguish the differences. And because I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion. I always say systems-based and community-based, right? So systems-based, their allegiance is more towards the organizations for which they work and upholding their policies and protocols.
There are many different types of advocacy now. We have legal advocacy, we have court advocacy, shelter advocacy, and all of them are advocates positions that are needed to help victims of domestic violence and sexual assault.
Community-based are much more grassroots oriented. We always said that we were basically like biased supporters of the person we're working with. So our first allegiance is to that person and their needs, what they are wanting to do about their situations, their need for safety, their need for housing, their need for other services that might be important to them and their children. So our allegiance is to them before even systems-based, the people that work in the systems, right?
Grassroots advocacy is operating on a different level. A level that you're showing that person that you see them as an individual, that you care for them, and that there's more inside them, a strength inside them that they can make changes. Grassroots advocacy is about empowering, about following that confidentiality for her, about safety for her and her family. It's about following her and her needs through the entire system. It's about making sure that that voice for her is heard and that we are navigating her through that process according to her wishes, according to her plans, according to what that looks like for her. Grassroots advocacy is victim-centered, totally, and that's what's important about grassroots advocacy.
Operating from a victim-centered perspective, right? And meaning, anything that happens, how is this helpful or how is it hurtful to the victim? Has the victim been involved in this decision? Is the victim fully aware of this service or this procedure or this protocol? So everything is from their perspective, and that they're given full disclosure, full information about what services they're receiving or will be receiving. Letting this victim know, who we work for, what we do there, what our role is there, to make sure that they're not feeling like we're going to turn on them, we're going to record something that's going to come back to hurt them, right? For me, that's the difference between a grassroots advocate versus one that's systems-based. So in working in grassroots advocacy, we don't, this person is someone's daughter, this person is someone's mother, someone's relative, and I always ask, if if it's my relative, how would I want this person treated? What would I want for this person? How they should be treated after being assaulted, after being raped, after being battered. What would I want for my daughter? How would I want people to respond to my daughter after an assault like that? So, from a grassroots perspective, it would be about being a good relative, being supportive, accompanying her, making sure that there's a safety plan in place. Another tenet of grassroots advocacy is the importance of safety. I always talk with advocates about that's like number one priority. And what does that mean, right? Safety where? In what circumstances are we talking about safety? And I say everywhere. Safety within, the whole court process, and safety even with family, relatives, could they pose a threat to the victim? Safety at home, if her abuser shows up again, what can happen? So involving her in developing a safety plan wherever she may be. Safety at work, are her colleagues, is her employer aware of, the importance of safety? So safety is really important.
To get back to that grassroots advocacy, it's about seeing that individual and really taking the time to hear that story. It's not about checking the boxes. It's not about filling out the forms. It's about hearing them and hearing their story and providing those services to them as an individual and for their individual needs.
I believe, wherever the advocate is based, I would think that they could still operate within that grassroots advocacy perspective, right? And it takes a certain amount of commitment from those that may oversee the program to really to have the discussion around what is it that we're doing that may not be, incorporate the tenets and the values of grassroots advocacy, and how can we still regenerate those practices and keep them alive here, because they are really important. I also believe that they're connected to us as sovereign citizens of our nations, right? And to fully exercise our sovereignty, that I believe is also a big, huge part of grassroots advocacy, because the tenets are there as far as our cultural traditions. We shared space with people who were in need. We shared our food. We shared our dwellings with relatives who were in need. We sat with them. We visited. We prayed with them. Those are all really important aspects of grassroots advocacy, and I think we could still utilize those concepts and those practices no matter where the advocate is based out of, whether it's law enforcement or prosecution. I believe there's still that possibility that's kind of my call to action, if you will, that we come from someplace. Everyone has their history and their cultural traditions, and we can't leave those at the door. But we need to bring them in and have them be a part of our work. As an advocate, I also look at what do I need to record? What do I need to document in my records about my contact with this person, right? Because not everything that I record is important there. We don't have to record everything, right? And I've had circumstances where things got recorded that probably shouldn't have, that weren't needed. So I always, look at what's really important. It's, notes to make sure that there's continuity in the services that we provide, so we're not leaving, we're providing this person all the services that they need, that they identified as what they need. And that's where it needs to come from, is this person that we're working with, they need to be able to determine and identify what their needs are, right?
Words to describe a grassroots advocate: compassionate, loyal, knowledgeable, resourceful.
So 4 words that come to mind when thinking about describing a grassroots advocate. For sure, I would say fierce and courageous and vigilant and persistent. Grassroots advocacy, for me is, in a nutshell, being a good relative. And it affords us the opportunity to practice our cultural traditions and work with people as a relative.